Om Shri Vishnupad Paramahansa Pandrakacharya Satya His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya's Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Santaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories, all glories, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So continuing with the final chapter in this third canto. Today is text 28, and word by word, and the translation. I want to thank everyone who managed to make it here this morning, particularly the devotees from Grand Rapids, because if y'all weren't here, there would be even less people here. So thank you all for coming. But I understand there was an ecstatic kirtan and maybe a cleanup going on until around 2 a.m. So thank all of those who are not here for doing that, because that's why they're not here. Tat Deha, her body. Paratta, by others. The damsels created by Kardama. Posha, maintained. Api, although. Akrisa, not thin. Cha, and. Adi, anxiety. Asambhavat, from not occurring. Babho, shown. Malayi, by dust. Avachana, covered. Sadhumba, surrounded by smoke. Eva, like. Havaka, fire. Tasadeha para tatposho. Tadeha paratapuso. Tadeva paratapuso. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Bhavo malayas avasanaha. Bhavo malayarachanaha. Bhavo malayarachanaha. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha. Tadeha parataposo. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Bhavo malayar avachanam. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha.
Tadeha parataposo. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Bhavo malayar avachanam. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha. Tadeha parataposo. Tadeha parataposo.
Ladies, Pyakrishastadya sambhavat. Bhavo malayarachanaha. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha.
Tadeha parataposo. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Bhavo malayar avachanam. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha. Tadeha parataposo. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat.
Bhavo malayarachanaha. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha.
Tadeha parataposo. Pyakrishas tadya sambhavat. Bhavo malayar avachanam. Sadhumayeva pavrakaha.
Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Her body was being taken care of by the spiritual damsels created by her husband Kardama, and since she had no mental anxiety at that time, her body did not become thin. She appeared just like a fire surrounded by smoke. Purport. Because she was always in trance, in transcendental bliss, the thought of the personality of Godhead was always carefully fixed in her mind. She did not become thin, for she was taken care of by the celestial maidservants created by her husband. It is said, according to Ayurvedic medical science, that if one is free from anxiety, he generally becomes fat. Devahuti, being situated in Krishna consciousness, had no mental anxieties, and therefore her body did not become thin. It is customary in the renounced order of life that one should not take any servants from a servant or a maid, but Devahuti was being served by the celestial maid servants. This may appear to be against the spiritual concept of life, but just as fire is still beautiful even when surrounded by smoke, she looked completely pure, although it seemed that she was living in a luxurious way. I repeat, her body was being taken care of by the spiritual damsels created by her husband Kardamba. And since she had no mental anxiety at that time, her body did not become thin. She appeared just like a fire, surrounded by smoke. There's one of the ladies, there's a yellowish bead bag there, if you could bring it to me. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the cough lozenge are there in case I start in. Thank you. Om Gyantimirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chaktunitam Yena Tasme Sri Gurave Namaha. Everyone, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskachya Satarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevyata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So we've been spending some time the discussion of Devahuti Devi, yesterday's class also. And because I don't get to see all of you that often, I wanted to speak a little bit about some of the wonderful qualities, devotional qualities of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So if you don't mind, So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Madhya Lila 22.
Okay, can you keep it close?
Pardon? Okay. Is that better? Can you hear? Okay. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Madhya Lila 22, 78, 80, there's a nice list of Krishna's pure devotees, the devotional qualities, the 26 characteristics of pure devotee. And there's in other places listed some similar qualities, that are similar but aren't mentioned. So maybe a little of both. And one of the qualities is that a pure devotee is always poetic. So when we get to that point, there's somebody, you the one who's managing that, then we'll switch the verse up there to a beautiful offering, a poem, if you will, by Srila Prabhupada to his spiritual master, and we'll together be reciting that. But just wait till we get there. Wait till I see. Otherwise, everybody will be there and not where I am. So I'll tell you when finish shortly. So, Kripalu, kind. So this is a wonderful quality of a pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada certainly had that quality. He saw everyone with the potential to serve Krishna, and he was especially kind to children. One time during a darshan with a married couple and their child, it was in Toronto. So the little child wasn't a walker yet, was a crawler. And he woke up and he crawled off his mother's lap and he crawled to Srila Prabhupada. And of course, the mother's about to grab and he's like, no, it's okay. And he crawled on Prabhupada's lap. And then she was like, what to do? He's like, it's okay. And then the child fell asleep. And the darshan was over. What to do? It's okay, I'll ring my bell when he wakes up. So that they would know, Even when we were at John Lennon's place, we had this a nice room. It had been a musical room formerly, but it was just perfect for our temple during that time. And there was kind of this staircase leading up to where we had, normally the conductor would have been standing there to, conduct the music people. But of course, Prabhupada was there speaking to us. And this little boy, Dhruvananda actually, so he was about the same age as my daughter at that time. So he crawled up those little stairs. This is like during Prabhupada speaking to everybody. And he crawls up there and the mother is not knowing what to do. Again, Prabhupada, it's okay. And he just went up and put his head in Prabhupada's lap, and Prabhupada just continued speaking. And another funny, was kind of an amusing incident happened with this same boy. So this couple had joined Krishna consciousness as a result of Harinam Sankirtan. Going up and down Oxford Street, and they had a little outdoor kiosk. Every day they'd see these devotees going by with no idea who we were, what we were. But what they noticed is dancing and chanting, singing happily in the street. And that was very appealing to them. So one day somebody just handed them a book and just kept on going. Didn't explain anything, but in the book there was the address of our London temple, which was in walking distance. So they showed up, started coming, and then one day when the devotees went by, they closed their little booth there, the kiosk, and they joined the Harinam Sankirtan party. And that day after they came back from that most ecstatic first valuable experience on Sri Harinam Sankirtan, they decided that was it. They were going to join these people. And at the time, our place was under construction. That's why we were living at John Lennon's. So they came out there and they joined. So as it was in those days, they weren't actually married, but they had been living together. They had committed relationship and they had this child. So they wanted to get married. Now they were understanding things a little differently. So Prabhupada agreed. They got initiated. Draupadi and Devananda. Son was given the name Dhruvananda, and it was arranged for their marriage in this little place. And actually, the place it had been specially built by the previous, owners. And of course, places like that, the owners were not poor people, so kind of extravagant. And it was a place for chamber music. Does anybody here have any idea what chamber music is? He's kind of nodding his head. I'll explain it to you. It's very boring. And it's not the kind of music you would be dancing and chanting with. So good music to sleep by. Anyways, now there was a whole different atmosphere going on in that place. And the wedding was about to begin. And Prabhupada looks, he goes, and he sees, I'm sitting there with Ruvananda. He goes, oh, you must remove the boy. Remove the son. Generally, the children come after the marriage. So they should not watch their parents get married. It was like nothing at all critical. It was a point of etiquette. He was always concerned, for the actual full well-being of all the disciples. And little points of etiquette like that were sometimes inserted. We wouldn't have ever considered anything like that, generally the child comes after the marriage, so he shouldn't watch the parents get married. Now, Srila Prabhupada, kind to everyone. He does not make anyone his enemy. He's truthful, Satyasara Sama. He never spoke about anything except Krishna. Okay, there would be some conversations about, this or that. Everything ended up being connected to Krishna. Just like when Lord Chaitanya went to when he went to Gaya, then he came back, he was now initiated, and he was a teacher, he had his school. And suddenly everything was Krishna, 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 related to Krishna. That's truthfulness. I've mentioned how anyway, I won't get through this if I start inside. So he's equal to everyone. So Srila Prabhupada this is nidosa, equal to everyone. Srila Prabhupada would present himself as insignificant. He would say, I've not done anything extraordinary. And during one Vyasa Puja, he explained to the devotee, that was, I think, in Los Angeles. So it says the spiritual master takes his disciples as his spiritual master. That is the position. He thinks that Krishna has sent me so many spiritual masters. He doesn't think of himself as a spiritual master. He thinks himself as their servant because they have to be trained. Because they have to be trained, Krishna has appointed him to train them, and therefore he thinks of himself as a servant of the disciples. This is the position. So when one is advanced, he can see the importance of devotees, and an advanced devotee never disrespects or disobeys another devotee. So disrespect to another devotee is like a big offense, apara, And this Vaishnava apara, serious offense. So therefore, we teach to address among the devotees, Prabhu, Prabhu, such and such Prabhu. This should not be simply spoken by the lips. It should be realized. Everyone should think another devotee is his Prabhu, his master, not he should try to become the master. So this was from the Nectar of Devotion series in 1972. Specific date was actually October 23rd in Vrindavan, when we had the incredible good fortune of being with Srila Prabhupada during this Kartik time. And that was always there for this institution, everyone, It wasn't now Prabhu has become a word for the men. Mataji's over there, Prabhu's over there. That's not how Prabhupada addressed this. And it's not like, some people say, well, Prabhu's a male version. That is where Prabhupada's incredible visionary and purity. He saw everybody as devotees of Krishna. And he didn't make some minor distinction according to grammatical type of consideration. And he was teaching us the same. So then it was always very normal at that time how we addressed each other. And it was very sweet. It made a nice mood, so just keep it in mind. When asked if he was the spiritual master of the world, he looked down. No, I'm simply their servant. No one can fault him. So if you've heard Shamsundar speak or read his book, Chasing the Rhinos, Shamsundar, he studied Srila Prabhupada very carefully for 2.5 years during the time he was the servant. He was a secretary. And he was not trying to look for fault in a fault-finding way. So, but it was wondering, does he ever make any mistakes? It was just like wondering. And he concluded, he never made mistakes. There was no faults in Srila Prabhupada. No. One early example involved a young man named Krishna Das who was 19 years old, and he had joined in San Francisco. And Prabhupada handed him an envelope to take to the post office. And he starts to go out the door and he sees there's a little slit. You probably, if you've heard me speak, I've mentioned this before, but there's a little slit in the envelope. So he goes back and he says, look, there's a little opening. Prabhupada's just post. So he starts to go and then he comes back again, but there's an opening. And Prabhupada said, in a very matter of fact, know that all I do is perfect. He didn't say it in a heavy way, just know that all I do is perfect. But he understood at this stage, this young man wasn't going to get it. So he explained, he said, this letter is going to India. And they're going to see, here's a letter from America. Maybe there's some money. So they'll open it up. They'll see there's no money. So they'll just discard it and the letter will not reach the addressee. So I made a little hole there. They can see no money. So, there no fault and also expert. So he was magnanimous, Vandanaya. He could sit on a magnificent silver throne in Varanasi, which there's a picture of this. They offered him this really opulent silver throne to sit on. Vyasasai to sit on it. It was so huge. Or he could sit on the ground, not even a mat beneath him. Either way, that was his magnanimous. He wasn't demanding a particular type of respect. And neither would he stand up before a mundane person in Paris, but he spoke to him very respectfully. So what happened? The devotees had managed to get an appointment with a very high-level government person. So they go into this place, like 25, 30 foot tall, walls, ceilings, huge, thick velvet drapes all the way up to the, now, we for us to get these little drapes, how much did we have to struggle? How much did we have to pay? Marble everywhere, ornate gilded furniture. Devotees, and that was the waiting room. So the devotees are waiting. And most of them were sitting on the floor, but there was furniture, and Prabhupada was sitting on a chair. A simple chair, but of course their simple chair was kind of elaborate. So then this lady comes in and she announces that so-and-so, whatever, whoever was coming, all will all rise. So the devotee stood up and Prabhupada, he was respectful, but he didn't rise. He kept sitting. So the lady assumed he didn't hear or didn't understand. So she repeats herself and included, arise, stand up, like he didn't know. No, Prabhupada just remained sitting. So when she understood that he wasn't going to stand up, the person came in. Prabhupada greeted him very cordially and they had a very cordial, respectful conversation. But Prabhupada was not going to stand up for an ordinary, mundane personality, At the same time, he was respectful. Mridu, mild. So while Prabhupada could be very strong and assertive on Krishna's behalf in his attempts to wake up the sleeping souls, his demeanor and his behavior was always mild in manner, that of a gentleman. And he wanted us as disciples and grand disciples on down the line to be looked upon in the same way. You know, Suchi, always clean. There's a book out, I don't know, it's a new book by Govinda Dasi, one of the early disciples. Her and her husband, they were a husband and wife team who served Srila Prabhupada personally. She would do secretarial work, cooking. He was doing, other personal services. So she's written a book, Sandalwood and Roses. Maybe it's on Amazon, I'm not sure. But it comes from when you were around Prabhupada, there was always this really divine fragrance. Because the devotees who would clean his clothes, they'd put some sandalwood in the spray bottle, and when they were ironing, they would spray. So the clothes had that nice fragrance. And he liked yellow roses because they were always fragrant. Nowadays roses may look great, but they may not have any scent. So at least in those days, the yellow roses had a scent, so there would be that fragrance. But also he would teach us simple acts of cleanliness that we just didn't have a clue about, like rinse your mouth out and wash your hands after eating. And by the way, when you rinse your mouth, first you put the water in, swish it around and swallow it. So that when you do, the next time you rinse it out, you spit. Why? You don't want to spit prasad down the sink, right? Like who thinks of these things? Another example, when they take the water around after being offered, so they come around and put a little water on your head. Well, some people stick their fingers in the water. No, muchi, nails, not clean. They're never clean, the nails. We got that one by going into a Christian church, a Catholic church specifically, because when you go into the Catholic, anybody here a former Catholic? No? Yeah, so you go in and they have that water. Yeah, and you stick your fingers in it. So we were going and put it on your head. So we were going in the church. We were going to look at this church for some reason. He stuck his fingers in there. He didn't. He was noticing the people sticking their fingers in, and he said they haven't been trained. They don't understand what is cleanliness, And it looks like some of us haven't got that message yet either. Keep it in mind. You can put the water like this, take a flower petal or a flower, dip it in and shake it. Don't stick your moochie nails in the holy water, if you will. He was without possessions, Kinchana, fully conscious that Krishna was the supreme proprietor. We always say, oh, I don't own anything. But then, when we were hippies, nobody owns anything. But we didn't connect that the supreme owner of everything was Krishna. And Prabhupada had full consciousness of that. And in that way, he was without possessions. Anything that was there, he was using in Krishna's service because they belonged to Krishna. So, Sarvopakaraka, he works for everyone's benefit. So by giving knowledge of the absolute truth and opportunity for devotional service, everyone who came in contact with Srila Prabhupada had the opportunity to be benefited in this lifetime. So, Shanta, peace. He was very peaceful. So during the Second World War, the Japanese were bombing Calcutta. And most people, if they could afford it, got the heck out of Calcutta because they knew they were going to be bombed. So it was, pretty much a vacated place. Prabhupada could have gone, but his family left, but he chose to stay. The bombs are going off. What were you doing, Prabhupada? Oh, I was making kachuris for my deities. And he saw the bombs as reflections of Krishna's external energy. No, he wasn't, oh, there's the enemy. There's Krishna's an external energy, He was always surrendered to Krishna. Krishnaya Sarano. Yeah. He had no material desires, akama. So he used everything at all times in Krishna's service. And he didn't waste anything because it belonged to Krishna. So a couple of examples. In those days, we wrote letters, stuck them in envelopes, sent them along. He would take the envelopes, open them out, and he would write notes on the inside. He didn't waste paper, would grab a fresh piece of paper to write 3 words and then crumple it up and toss it. No, he used everything in Krishna's service, and therefore he's very careful how it was used. One time in London at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, when he went out on his walk, and the ladies who were cleaning his room had the windows open. Now it was a cold day, like today was a cold day, right? Out this morning. So the fireplace was going full blast, and they opened the windows. So he came back a little early. Had he been a little later, the windows would have been closed. But since he was a little early, the windows were still open. So he looks in, he goes, "Oh, your father must be a wealthy man." Because I was looking at the heat on, why would you have the windows open? So, his little, it was like a mild chastisement, not harsh, but made the point. Meek, steady, aniha, stira, the Vijata Sad Sarana, he controls the senses, and he taught us the same by his own perfect example. The Mitabook, he does not eat more than is required. So he would be offered opulent prasadam, but he would only offer honor as much as required. Like I'd be, like Vyasa Puj, come in with a big, huge tray of everything we could think of cooking on there. We take a little bit, as much as needed, distribute the rest. And regarding fasting, one time it was an Ekadashi, and one of the devotees came to assist. Somebody else was already there. So when this girl arrived, she didn't expect, because she had heard about Ekadashi, and she heard it was fasting. So she didn't expect there would be any eating, but she came anyway to tidy up the room, clean up the kitchen, whatever. And she sees there's some preparations going on. She says, "I thought it was fasting. I thought it was a fast day." And he smiled. Milk and fruit, they were preparing fruit. Milk and fruit is also fasting. And then he said to another time, fasting means feasting. Figured that one out. Those with regards to an Ekadashi. So he offers respects to everyone. Manada saw us. He saw us as I've already explained, us as students, as his master sent by his Guru Maharaj. And he furthermore explained that anyone serving the spiritual master is a pure devotee. Of course, when we heard that, we were like, 3 minutes into the movement, and we heard that, oh, you're serving the Guru, you're a pure devotee, and we're suddenly feeling more elevated than we actually were. And then we started, we could understand different levels of pure devotees, just like different levels of students. Your preschool, your kindergarten, first, second grade, and your middle school, you have your high school, and your college, and you have your, you go on your graduate courses, your PhD, post PhD. Everyone's a student, but you can't say they're on the same level. But still, they're a student. So the same way, there's different levels of pure devotees. So Amani, he doesn't desire respect for himself. So there was a very interesting exchange in Paris during a program that had been arranged, mainly targeting students, but others were there, and it was a very full auditorium. And anybody here French? Okay, so I can tell you, French people can be really sarcastic towards people who aren't French. Like, even if they speak English, they will, and you know, you're English, you don't speak French, they'll just like, won't speak English, you know, it's their attitude, like, you know, what, you know. Anyway, he was there, and for the most part, the audience was very attentive. And the devotees had brought the Vyasa sign from the temple and put it on the stage, and he was sitting on that Vyasa sign. So toward the end, this one person, he started heckling. You know what heckling is? Like, you know, making annoying, you know, being rude, but verbally rude. So Prabhupada asked one of the, what is, you know, what does he want? What is it? And they were told him, well, he's objecting that you're sitting on this big seat. So then Prabhupada said, oh, you would like to sit here? Yes, you can do that, provided that you become Krishna conscious and speak Krishna consciously. You can also sit here. So he diffused it in such a way that even that person had no way to retort, and nobody in the audience became upset. Very grave Gambira. One time somebody noticed that they were looking at a picture, and he didn't have a big silly grin on his face, because he never did have a big silly grin, although he would certainly smile and even laugh. But this was a more sober appearing picture, so the person was like, do you ever smile? Yes, you know, somebody who wasn't too know so much. And Prabhupada commented, he doesn't understand spiritual ecstasy. Karuna, merciful. This one young girl, she came, young woman, and she wasn't married, but because of the lifestyle, she was pregnant. Because she became a devotee, nice devotee, but when she first came, so she's pregnant. And Prabhupada had a meeting with the young unmarried men, and he goes, this poor girl, she has no husband, and the baby will have no father. Will someone marry her? He was so merciful, so concerned for the welfare. And one person volunteered, Murari Prabhu, he married her. So I don't think that kind of thing would happen today, you know, because nobody has the mercy and compassion to the degree that Srila Prabhupada did. Even one other young girl who was very badly treated by her mother. And the brother, I've mentioned earlier, this boy who had taken the envelope, Krishnadas. So he had a younger sister. And, you know, she did not, just for an example, the mother didn't want the child. She's pregnant, she didn't want the child. So thankfully she didn't do an abortion. But she had the baby and walked out of the hospital, leaving the baby. So eventually, you know, in California, they were very much keep the family together. So they're kind of patched it together. But she didn't have the greatest upbringing, you know, and she's 16 years old. She's like feeling really, you know, miserable. And her brother shows her Bhagavad Gita, the first one. And it started resonating with her, and she was trying whenever she could to go to the temple because she saw happy devotees. She loved the chanting, but the mother was holding her back because she would make her go out. She'd keep her out of school to send her out to the stores to steal, to shoplift. You know. So Krishnadas during a darshan asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, is there some way we could help my sister Sarah? Her name was Sarah. And Prabhupada, he thinks for a moment and he looks at me and Shamsundar. He goes, perhaps Malati and Shamsundar could adopt her. And she's 16, I'm 22, Shamsundar's 24. Yeah. But this was Prabhupada's mercy, his compassion, you know. He wasn't thinking materially. And as a result, we didn't think that way either in his presence. I mean, I can imagine now and say, well, look, nowadays somebody would say, well, look, that's just really impossible, you know. But no, next day, that's how you get empowered by the pure devotee. He hands you something and you accept it. Next day, I went down to the courthouse, found out what to do, filled out the papers, got a court date. And the girl shows up with her mother, the father. They were separated, but they both had to be there because they were the guardians. Myself, Shyam Sundar. One by one, this judge takes us into her chamber. He speaks to us. Then we're all sitting out there in that courtroom. She comes out. She goes, "Well, this may be a little unusual, but I award custody." She goes, "This may be a little unusual. The girl's only 16 and the mother is 22. Already she's calling me her mother. I award custody to this couple." And she had a big, bum the gavel, bang. Suddenly we had a teenager for a dog. I was at that time pregnant with Saraswati. And interestingly enough, when Saraswati, my daughter, was born, it was on Saradia's birthday. So Maitra, friendly to everyone. Just like when Giriraj Swami's parents went to try to convince Prabhupada to give their son back, like he had kidnapped her or something, that was their goal. And they tried in so many ways. They tried offering a very large financial bribe, the $1 million check, which they could afford. And then the mother got, and Prabhupada, you can go if you want. No, he didn't want to go. And then the mother pulled the mother card, but who will take care of him if he gets sick? Prabhupada said, I'll take care of him. I'll give him Sandesh. Because he always said Sandesh was like a tonic. So when they're leaving, they were actually smiling. They had completely been defeated, but they were smiling. So one of the devotees said, Prabhupada, everyone just loves you. And Prabhupada just in a very calm, matter-of-fact way, yes, because I love everyone. So poetic. Okay, now you can put this up there. So, there's a wonderful, beautiful book of poetry, Prabhupada's poems. Have you all seen that? You have. You have seen that book of poetry, Prabhupada's poems? I didn't get everything.
Like when he read Prabhupada Leela Amrita, like in that,
yeah.
Srila Prabhupada wrote a poem about his spiritual master.
Okay, yes. So there's another book, really nice, and has his pre-USA poems, and then the arrival one that we all know that he wrote before disembarking from the Jaladuta. But poetic, his poems, his eloquent purports. So this poem was one of the many poetic works Prabhupada has written, and it was a Vyasa Puja offering for the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's 30. It was in 1935, so do the math. I think it was like 61, 62. Would have been 61. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was so touched by this poem, he told them to print it. He had a magazine called The Harmonist and print it. So we all used to sing. We loved this poem, and we would sing it. We practically had it memorized. And so I thought, yes, let us remember Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta by also reciting this poem. Is everybody able to read it? Okay. So in the interest of time, kind of a simple tune. Adore, adore, yeeter than May. When he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. Okay, so all of you. Adore, adore, the happy day, blessed in heaven, sweeter than May. when he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. O my Master, the evangelic angel, give us thy light, light up thy candle, struggle for existence of human race. The only hope is divine grace. Misled we are all going astray. Save us, Lord, our fervent pray. Wonder thy ways to turn our face. Adore thy feet, your divine grace. Forgotten Krishna, we fallen souls, paying most heavily the illusions told. Darkness all around, all in trace. The only hope is divine grace. Message of service has brought a healthful life as Chaitanya wrought. Unknown to all is full of grace. That's your gift, your divine grace. Absolute essential thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity thou hast moved. This gives us a life anew and fresh. Worship thy feet, your divine grace. Had you not come, who had told the message of Krishna, forceful and bold? That's your right, you have the lace. Save me a fallen, your divine grace. The line of servants as drawn by you is pleasing and healthy like morning dew. The oldest of all but in new dress, miracle done, your divine grace. Your divine grace, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Expert. ISKCON is a sign of his expertise. Making Brahmins out of malechas is a sign of his expertise. Introduction of deity worship in the West, another sign of his expertise, particularly the installation of Lord Jagannath. You know, Moni, silent. Not like that means you sit there, but the silence. He only talks about Krishna and he does not advertise himself. So the real silence is we only speak about Krishna. Compassionate. You know. So I already told you about adopting Saradia. So she was thinking now that she's our daughter, she would not have to go to school. She was wrong. Prabhupada said you have to finish school. And fortunately, there was a high school just down a block. So in Sari and Tilak, because we weren't that many of us, so it still was not a common sight. Going to the school with the records from her former school, which were like, because she was absent so much, there was like so much absenteeism, like her grades were really low. So I'm going with the records. I go to this inside, there's the secretary. What do you want? I want to see the principal. Why? And I told her, she was looking at me and she sends me in. So he looks up and I said, I want to enroll a new student. And of course, I'm so young, it's like this is a high school. I explained a little bit, and I presented the records. And then he's looking at the records and he goes, this doesn't look good. And suddenly, I can only say super soul because I suddenly became very forceful. Just give her one chance. I promise you, it will be different this time. And I was like so forceful. For some reason, he said, all right. So the next day she went to school, Sarli and Tila. And she was immediately a very good student. Every day she didn't miss a day. And she was still like, didn't want to be going there. And Prabhupada was coming for another visit, and she was thinking, I have something to tell him. And when he hears that, he's going to say, oh, that's very bad. You shouldn't go, you must stay. So she raises her hand, and she goes, Swamiji, when I go, when I go to school, the boys are bothering me. He goes, oh. And she goes, yes, when I go to school, they're asking me for my address. They want to see me after school. He goes, that's all right. When they ask for your address, give them the address of the temple, and that way they'll see Krishna. So compassionate on his daughter and compassionate upon those who want to see the daughter. So expert. He turned hippies into happies. When asked, what are hippies? Prabhupada said, something extraordinary. And he was saying, how many of you have seen the little pamphlet, Who's Crazy? It was like a very popular little pass out in those days. Who's crazy? And he proved that everyone was crazy who was not connecting themselves with God. You would naturally be crazy because you'd be connected with the material energy. So the mental hospital people, many times the devotee parents would think their kids are crazy. And in one case, like more than one case, but they put the kid in the hospital. You could do that in those days. You could even sign your wife or your husband into the mental hospital against their will. So parent put the kids in and kid in. They're observing the kid for a few days, and I guess the doctor who was in charge says, I don't think he's crazy at all. He's ultra sane, very sane. So even a doctor who was a doctor of the psychiatric order could see the sanity of the devotees. So just a few words, so we can always remember. We'll hear sometimes, we are so fortunate. And sometimes when I hear, oh God, everybody, we are so fortunate, but why are we fortunate? Due to the presence of Srila Prabhupada in our life, because he has given us the proper guidance to be a human being. It's not just our physical body that we're a human being, because there's many human beings are called cats and dogs because they have no clue that God is how to die. He's given us a complete blueprint for spiritual life, and particularly the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Anyone can benefit. And when you get a little bit, you want to know a little more. Never has books like this. And we have so many wonderful devotees because they're following their spiritual master's instructions. You can count them, as I mentioned earlier, as pure devotees. Take guidance from them. And then your life will also become perfected. So thank you very much for listening. And somehow or other, just think about it at least once a day, particularly when you wake up, about your good fortune. Prabhupada was asked, what is our good fortune? You hear that word sometimes, good fortune. And Prabhupada said, I have created for you. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Any quick questions? We can do that. Otherwise, I'm sure today is another fantastic day. coming up Sunday program. Ramroy Prabhu will be speaking with you. I'll be over in Ypsilanti. And I don't know what you're doing in the evening, but I'll be in Detroit after that. And but here there will be a wonderful Sunday festival going on. And this beautiful darshans yesterday and today is like, even if your eyes are about to be glued shut, just one glimpse of the beautiful forms of Sri Sri Radha Govindana Vallabha and the amazing decorations by the amazing devotees was enough to cause you to, awaken up. Jeev Jaga, wake up, sleeping souls. And thank all of you who have made this wonderful, stunning darshan yesterday also and today. And the garlands, another little point with the garlands. So it's described in Krishna book, the length of the garland, which should be to the top of the foot, Krishna's garland. It can be that long. So here would be, I think, a little bit longer. And keep in mind, he likes to dance and you might get all tangled up. So it's a good idea maybe to have a measurement for the garlands, from neck to foot so that they're not too long so that he can dance gracefully if he wants to, you know. But anyways, sometimes he can break the rules and have longer garlands, and they're very beautiful. Thank you very much. Yeah.